growth ever upwards, ever uber alles.
Well, then that's crazy. I mean, that's why they never accomplish anything in their lives. But let's address the ones who are listening to this show, because
they're probably within a 1/3 of the general population that would acknowledge that cycles existed and actually pertain to them.
I agree, or less. Or less. Yeah. Okay, understanding cycles like that, Clif. Cycles or changes are always brought about by events. Let's take the sun. We know the sun goes in a cyclic action. I don't know how long the cycles are, but don't you agree that somewhere, somehow, there is a physical event that causes the cycles to come about?
Certainly.
If we could figure that, whatever the causes are, not only, let's say, to the sun, but let's say to human nature, to a lot of the natural changes that take place on Earth, if we could figure that out, couldn't we begin to get control of our lives emotionally, physical, spiritual, and what have you?
Oh, certainly. And the place to start would be individual mind control. Because without understanding your own mind as an instrument, as a tool, and using it as such, and that's the first step. In order to examine the broader context, you need to get at that first.
How would be the best way to do that?
There's many different schools. I favor a thing called Vipassana meditation. It arises out of a thing called small raft Buddhism. The religion aspect does not enter into it at all. It's a tool. It's a technique. Another way to do it is to look up Patanjali and his Science of Yoga. The secrets of the universe are contained within that volume. The Science of Yoga has nothing to do with stretching or poses or any of that.
No, of course not.
And it's all about mind control and all of the various etheric tools that are available to you. And once you start to control your own mind, then you can see advertising for what it is and disregard it. And disregard everybody else's assumptions and even challenge your own, because that's where you truly learn things. Is to say, I'm operating under the understanding that Planet X doesn't exist. What if I open my mind and actually follow, as Mark Twain said, or someone else, that the difference between the educated and the uneducated is that the educated mind can entertain an idea without necessarily accepting it. Okay, and it's very useful to do that. It's very useful to do, as Einstein said, to do thought modeling. You just look at it and examine all the ramifications. And you say to yourself, well, if I examine Planet X, or now let me examine my belief system that would disregard the potential for that. And lo and behold, huge amounts of the universe open up to you.
Very interesting. My gosh. In learning how to do that, once that begins to happen, do you agree that at that point mankind, individuals, and then groups, and then hopefully all of us, can reach a level where we literally can accept the fact that we have the ability of creating our own reality, and we do, and that by creating our own reality we can change the direction that life itself within the universe is going?
I would certainly hope so. And I would also postulate that it may work the other way. Whereas individuals like ourselves may struggle to provide pathways to enlightenment to other individuals, having already, being old farts and having been there before, we may also find ourselves in a situation where there may be a critical mass of mentition that is required in order for the species to evolve. That is to say, we may need...
I'm sure that's right.
We may need 7-10 billion people.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we'll cross some threshold, just like the theoretical crossing of the threshold for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
There's this theory out there that if you got enough computer bits together and you stick them all together and wire them right, that eventually it'll get consciousness. I dispute that, but that's a secondary issue entirely. But that operating theory does not necessarily preclude the same thing from happening to humans. If suddenly we reach 10 billion people or something, we may need that many in order for the global conscious mind to evolve.
Clif, have you run or checked any of the runs for any indication of what might be happening on December 21st, 2012?
No, that's way out there, no. And also combination of those people that would be speculating about it and bring in those kind of dates and long-range thoughts would be too hot for me to be able to discriminate against their conscious beliefs.
Okay.
It's like trying to pick out who's going to win in a politician. Both sides are just natteringly emotionally hot about it, so it's a gift.
Okay, obviously the reason I say that is because, that's when the Mayan calendar ends its cycling, and that's when so many other indigenous religions around the world, everything points to December 21st, 2012.
True, and I agree that we're in that period of time that the last 7 years, and it's coincidentally, tied into tribulation stuff out of the Bible and that kind of thing, and we're certainly going to find all of that, and we certainly are in those times, and we're certainly in a transitional period. Is it the end of everything? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Is it the beginning of everything? I don't know either.
Yeah.
I do know some things, having gone down far distance down the Enlightenment Trail. I know that some things don't matter. I also know that the indications we're getting out of the bots are suggestive that by 2008, centralization, the powers that be even, will find themselves also engaged in the upheaval, not to their benefit.
I'm inclined to agree, because I do not believe that the powers that be, the puppet masters, are going to win this war.
It doesn't work that way, correct?
No.
They've lost instantly setting on that path at this time. The cycles are against them. They're fighting the tail end of a cycle, trying to continue energy from the midpoint of it, and it just ain't going to happen.
Do they know it?
No, because they're linear minds. Those that are tuned into the cycles, there may be some in the invisible hand that are mystical enough to be back that far, but I can't fathom that mind, because in my personal experience, as you go down the Enlightenment Trail, the more you reach understanding, there's all these traps that lay in the way for you. Some of them are, one of them I fell into myself was compassion. I have compassion disease. And so it's stuck with me a number of years. And I do not see how a mind that's down the Enlightenment Trail could fail to at least encounter these traps and be changed by them, and not be changed by them. So how someone could go down this trail and also participate in that level of evil is beyond my understanding.
Are you saying that compassion does not fit in with evolvement?
Oh, no. It's a necessary part of it. But you cannot allow it to control everything and degrade you. It is trash.
Okay. Yeah, I follow that.
At some point you have to be compassionate, but compassion also many times involves cruelty and karmic guilt and debt and so on.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And maybe not cruelty in the actual sense of the word, but what may seem to be cruelty.
No, I don't mince words. There is evil in every man, myself included. To deny it, to mask over it, gives it power that it should not have. Words have power as a vibrational tool, as an expression of a vibration, and so on. So I'm sorry I'm very strong on this. When I say cruelty, I mean just that. It is a cruel and terrible thing to have to participate in putting down your favorite pet because that pet has cancer. It is cruel on yourself, on your karmic burden. It relieves the pet of the suffering, but you always wonder if you've chosen the right moment, and so on. It is cruelty. It is torture on all parties. The vet suffers, the pet suffers, and you suffer.
Okay.
Tell me how that is not cruelty.
Well, we may
be necessary, I grant you.
We may be talking semantics more than anything else, because sometimes what seems to be cruel is also the natural a natural level of evolution where you cannot be caught up. See, years ago when I started to study a lot of the Eastern philosophies, and I'm going back over 40 years now, I could never understand how so many of your let's call them Eastern masters, the mystics and what have you, the yogis, and they could see events like in India, where their own people, are starving to death, are dying from disease, and you name it. And all they do is stand and look at it and don't do anything. And I could never understand that until years later, when I realized that what they were doing is they were so evolved that they could look at events happening around them and say, I understand where these people are. Now, I also understand what their next step will be.
And I should not interfere.
And I should not interfere, because if you do, then you're taking on their karma.
And you see my problem with the web bots. And
well, yes, I do. And I understand on the different levels that you're talking, too. About
it's a difficult lesson to learn.
And
I could use other words than cruelty, but having experienced such nastiness myself, it was cruel on me at the time. But it is a very necessary thing to learn. And detachment, benign or otherwise, is also one of those things that is necessary to learn.
Yeah, detachment, I think that's very important. You're right. Which is what I was just talking about.
Correct.
With so many of the great masters. And rather than look at us and then jump in, which I have a tendency to do, when you see something wrong or people suffering, my tendency, right or wrong, is I feel as though if I have an ability to do something about it, then I have that responsibility to do something about it.
And that's an emotional response that many of us share, but at the same time may be inappropriate and frequently is. And at the same time, again, we have to look at the issue of participation. Many people have said that the greatest harm that anybody can do is to merely stand silent in the presence of evil.
Yeah.
And starvation could be looked at that way. It's more of a natural issue, those sorts of things. There are times when it's not an issue of choosing your battles, but understanding your place in the universe and your participation in other people's life cycles. And that's the real tough lesson. And that's also the lesson that I have to skirt constantly with the data I have here. It's why I don't do individuals.
Yeah, because, now where do you draw the line, Clif, when you see something? And let's say, okay, and I'm thinking of an event right now that could be brought about. Let's say you look at some of these third world nations where millions of people are starving. And we have an ability to go in there, teach them how to grow their own food in such a way that nobody will ever have to starve again. Now, we could say...
Sir, let's stop right there and challenge our assumptions.
Okay.
Nobody's starving again. I'm sorry, that's not within the human history. And it's maybe not within the human future. Maybe humans as a species don't make it past 2012. There's a lot to suggest that we're on an extinction path. There's actual evidence to suggest that extinction is going on around us at a massive scale.
Oh, yeah. And
it's
happened.
Here sweltering now in the midst of Earth changes that we have to acknowledge have thrown normal out of the ballpark.
And we've gone through this cycle hundreds and hundreds of times in the past.
Correct. And it is very true, as Buckminster Fuller points out in the very first part of Synergetics, that the universe favors humans. Let's not question that. Let's just accept it. We're here. We've survived a number of things. On this planet, we know of at least 5 civilizations going back millions of years.
Right.
Maybe 9 going back tens of millions of years. Under the circumstances, we've been through this before, and some level has always come back out. It may be that is our karmic burden. It may be that if you examine our genome, our genetic sequence, we're artificial creatures. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that there's actual markers in our DNA. Having worked in an allele lab and knowing a little bit about electrophoresis and seen the results myself, I have to agree.
Yeah, sure. I do too.
If that's the case and someone's been mucking about with us, well, I would say, okay, hey, that's an evil worth standing up to, even if we're in our last days. Now, trying to keep people from starving, that is a very worthwhile goal. Trying to alter societies to achieve that, that's really difficult. That's trying to force things from top down. That's imposition. That's something we'll probably be leaving behind as we go through this period of aggression and so on. There are a lot of words that are going to disassociate from us, I think.